Okay, chapter 20 talks about the police and delinquency. So let's talk about types of policing, and let's talk about preventative patrol. This is one major type of policing. It involves uniformed officers cruising beats and marked patrol cars. Most departments also have juvenile officers or divisions that handle special youth problems. But remember that police only spend a small amount of their time dealing with crime. Most time is spent cruising a beat, performing administrative tasks, and less than half their time spent answering calls or on officer-initiated encounters, most of which involve non-criminal matters, so about 20% of time is spent on crime-related matters. Policing is primarily reactive in nature, right? So we often don't catch offenders. 20% of all crimes known to the police result in an arrest. Offenders are most likely to be apprehended if they're caught at the crime scene or the victims can identify them. And that is obviously more likely with a violent crime than a property crime. Research tells us that increasing response time doesn't actually even make a big difference. Police often also don't arrest offenders they do catch, so most suspected offenders are handled informally. Sometimes that means referrals made to social service agencies or diversion programs. How do police decide, though, whether or not to arrest someone and how to best to use their discretion? Well, we know this depends mostly on seriousness of the offense and the prior record of the offender. But some other factors that play a role here is, does the complainant press for an arrest? What's the demeanor or attitude of the offender? Whether their parents are willing and able to solve the problem, and then what are also the norms and policies of the department and the community. Police also don't arrest all suspected offenders because it would simply overwhelm the courts. They might often feel that an arrest and a referral are a waste of time because offenders only get a slap on the wrist, and that perhaps, especially with juvenile offenders, it's best if we deal with them informally. So preventative patrol is somewhat effective in controlling crime and delinquency, but it's not the best policing strategy. So what are some ways then the police could be more effective? Well, we could hire more police, and studies on this show mixed results. Most show little or no effect, but there's problems with those studies. Recent studies that do a better job of looking at causal order find that increasing the number of police does reduce crime. But the number of police is less important than what they're actually doing. So let's talk about police crackdowns. These are strategies that focus on hotspots of crime, and we could do this by increasing police presence. So we can use computer-generated maps that show us the location of hotspots by mapping different crimes and the locations in which they occur. Hopefully, this would deter criminals from committing crime by increasing direct control. And this is modestly effective at reducing crime. These crackdowns tend to be short-lived, but rotating them in unpredictable manners does increase effectiveness. The Minneapolis Hotspots Patrol experiment did show periodic visits or crackdowns may be effective. We can also crack down on specific crimes. So we could either target particular crimes, intensify patrol in those areas where selected crimes occur, and we may actually do some media coverage with this at the same time. And this does show some success. There was a crackdown on gun violence by youth gangs in Boston. And they've also cracked down on visible signs of disorder using zero-tolerance policing. What makes this most effective, though? We have to properly identify high crime areas and individuals, clearly communicate that behavior will not be tolerated, adequately monitor those areas, and consistently sanction. Community policing is an overall philosophy. A lot of police departments will develop a community policing unit, but that's not actually community policing. This is a philosophy, and it's basically fostering close ties between police and community. What this should do is allow the community to trust the police more and help them identify the underlying problems, which then would allow you to use problem-oriented policing. This was developed in response to Preventative Patrol, which isolates police from the communities, doesn't really deal with the underlying causes of crime, and doesn't fully involve community residents. So a couple of things here. One thing that gets used with community policing is what's called POP, Problem-Oriented Policing. And it's designed to deal with the underlying causes. And we do this through a method called SARA. Scanning. Police identify the problems. Analysis, they try to understand the causes of and develop solutions. Response, where they try to implement solutions. And then assessment, to go back and evaluate the effectiveness of those solutions. This is a piece that we're not very good at in the criminal justice system in general, that assessment piece. So let's take DARE, right? It's presented to school children by uniformed police officers and focuses on drug abuse, violence, and gang affiliation. But evaluation studies show it's not actually effective at reducing delinquency. There is one thing that DARE is very good at, though, and that is it increases trust in police officers. Youth organizations, these are like police athletic leagues, YMCA, things like that. They provide supervised recreation opportunities. Police here would serve as advisors, participate in activities, and recruit high-risk youth. Chicago has this thing called the Chicago Alternative Policing Strategy, where officers were permanently assigned to beats so that they could really get to know the community. They also then paired this with free roving rapid response units, which were implemented to reduce the police response time. They trained police in problem-oriented policing, and this did improve perceptions of police and did reduce certain types of crime. So overall, most community policing efforts haven't been rigorously evaluated, but the limited data suggests that they are somewhat effective in reducing fear of crime and improving police-community relationships. But the types of programs we have a mixed findings on effectiveness. So DARE does not work. Neighborhood watch programs do not work. Problem-oriented policing does. Youth programs do. And some broad-based efforts reduce some crime as well. So community policing does hold some promise for reducing crime.